Hello lab mates, I've been given this box to look at. Well, obviously not the box itself, that'd be a bit boring. But what's inside the box we can look at. This is on loan from Rob, Tabak Technologies. This guy here, he lends me a lot of Siglent gear when I want to do reviews and stuff. And Rob's asking if I wanted to have a look at this one. Yeah, sure, I do. Let's open her up. Unboxing videos, aren't they exciting? Chris, where are you? Oh look, here's another card from Rob. Standard thing, power cord. We have some probes. Yes, this is an oscilloscope, and yes, these are getting washed out by my lights. So there we go, PP510, 100 MHz probes, 2 of them. Oh wait, there's more. There's 2 more. There's 4 probes. That's right, it's a 4-channel scope. Let's get it out. So we also have in the bottom here, we have the USB cable for doing interfacing and a little quick start guide. Usual stuff you get with these scopes. Tells you how to do conversation on the probes, get you up and going quickly. Got a CD there, which would be the manual and everything on there, and potentially the scope software as well. I'm not sure if it's got scope on there actually. Anyway, this is a SDS1104X-U. There you go, all unpacked. Difference between this, it's a slightly stripped down version of 1104, the X-E, which is what I actually got on my shelf up here. So we can actually do a side-by-side comparison, I suppose. Let me just rejig my camera a little bit and show you. Right, so there's my X-E over there, and this is the X-U. It's basically the same thing, same casing. You would have reused all the casing because there's no point making any moulding if you don't need to. And you can see this difference here is got it's no MSO port, right? The S-bus, the port I referred to on here. That's the main difference there. And I think the actual controls are basically the same. I'm just doing a comparison now. Nothing different there, at least nothing I'm obviously seeing. So that's all basically the same. The other thing is 1 gig sample per second. Quad is 500 mega samples a second. Whereas this unit says 1 gig sample per second. I guess that's the same. I think that's got dual ADCs in it. I think this has only got single. I'm not sure how this actually works out. I think it's slightly lower. But they're both 100 MHz units. They should be very similar, but it's basically got a few less features in it. It's slightly stripped down in order to make the price cheaper. These are about $100 cheaper than my one up there, I believe. Anyway, we shall plug it in, power it up, and see what happens. Actually, before I do that, I thought I'd show you the back. So there's the ports on the back. So you've got USB, LAN, and it's actually on the X-E version. There's another USB port just here, which is used for things like your Wi-Fi and things like that. Right, let's plug power in. Using my own cable for this because I've already got it all on the bench here. It's all set up for that sort of stuff. Turn the power on. It's already preset 230 volt. Pull the feet out. Now, do we have a flashing light? No, we don't. It's completely off. Some equipment will just have a pulsing light. My X-E has a pulsing green light. This didn't have a pulsing green light. Some people like them, some don't. So I'll see what the boot up time's like. I didn't actually time it, did I? Suppose I'll watch it in. Look, you've got a clock running in the background at the timer for you. How's that? Thanks, Peter, for the clock. Let's see what we get. Here we go. So, let's have a look at some basic stuff. System status. Startup time's 1, so it's a brand new scope, never been used. Software version 1.1.5 R5. Let's get out of here. Single. It's got beeps. Beep sounds different to my other ones actually. It's a much more subtle beep. Sound on, off. Languages, various range of languages in there. English is defaulted. Got a pass fail option which is on that port on the back there. You can turn it on if you want. I've never actually used it myself, to be honest. Okay, you can turn the menu on off if you want to. So let's hook up them scope probes, check the compensation on these, see if they work alright, see if they've been preset or not. Rob may or may not have preset them, but I think this is a brand new unit, completely unused, completely untouched, so I think it probably isn't the case. But these all had the colour bands already pre-fitted to them, so I did check that, and normally you'll get these and they've got these little bands and you might have to fit them yourself to choose which channel you want to use that particular probe on, so you can align it with the colours. These already had all the bands already done, so there's all the set in there, various ones, so you get compensation probe adjustment, and you've got a metal probe tip there for doing high frequency measurements. Some insulated tips as well, and obviously the rings as I was saying. Let's pull this out, let's untangle it. Pick that up. Nice square wave. That's perfect already. Yeah, that's looking absolutely fine. So, set center point, that's trigger point over here. You can move the trigger point up and down if you want. Let's get a bit closer, shall we? So hopefully it doesn't wash out too much on my lighting, it's quite strong. So let's see what comparisons are between this and the standard XE model. This doesn't have the web server on it, the XE does have web server on it, so that's one of the things which makes it a little bit cheaper. I'm not sure about all the channel stuff. Let's turn the other channels on. Alright, so they're all turned on now. You see all four there. And we're down at 250 megasamples per second at this particular speed. I'll go a bit slower. I'm down to 50 megasamples per second. So let's just wind all the way up to maximum speed. So it's 250 megasamples per second at maximum speed. So that's the trade-off there. So my XE can do 500, so I can do twice that, if I remember that correctly. I'll turn off two channels, we're up to 500 now. Go to the faster speed, it's still 500. One channel is 1 gigasample. So that's fine. Now it doesn't matter which combination I have on, that's still 500. Do that one, that's still 500. So it doesn't matter which combination. If I do 3 channels, I'm down to 250. Regardless, so either 4 or 3, doesn't matter, 250. It's 250. So I'll turn it off. So down to 1 channel again, back to 1 gigasample. So that seems alright. Something I do like about the Siglents is they do tend to do things like have serial decoding and things like that as default, not options. So push a decode button. Let's see what we got. We've got something like square T down here. SPI, UART, CAN and LIN. They're the default ones that are built into it. And you can have multiple decode setups as well, so you can have different ones. Decode 1, decode 2. And you can set up the signals and thresholds, stuff like that, so you can tune it to your particular application. And configuration as well. Rewrite bit and stuff like that if you need to on this particular configuration of I2T. You know, SPI will be different configuration, different data length, stuff like that. So it's all those options. So I'm going to put that one back to I2T. Display is on, so I've now turned the decoding on, so it's on along here. Now because I'm not actually demonstrating an actual serial signal, you won't see anything. Right, so I'm not really too worried about that right now. Page 2, you also got list formats as well. You can turn it on if you want. It will show a list view of the data you're getting coming in when you're using decoding. I'm not using decoding right now, so therefore it doesn't matter. Tips info, that's a new thing, I haven't seen that before, don't know what that is. Hex, ASCII, binary and decimal, these are decoding schemes, so you can view the data in these different methods, you know, so if it's a serial version of a text string, you can actually read the text directly on the screen. Otherwise you can do the like binary or decimal stuff, or hexadecimal. So that's all pretty straightforward, right? But that's one of the things I do like about the Siglent scopes is that they do have the serial decoding built in. I think just for every scope they've got that built in as a default feature. It didn't used to be a default feature. I think in the early days it is an extra feature. You had to pay extra for it. For a long time now, every scope's got it built in, I believe. These days, there's so many things that use serial. Could be I2C or SPI. It's so common, especially amongst hobbyists. You know, things we're building, little projects we work on. Having those built in by default is great. This gives this scope an advantage over many other scopes, like some of the Hansex Mus tools, Unity scopes, those cheaper ones, which are trying to compete with this, I suppose. They're a similar kind of price bracket, but they don't have serial decoding at all, whereas this does. So this gives you an advantage straight away. This is a much nicer scope in that way. I've covered the SDS1104X-E before. If you haven't seen that video, then you should probably go back and check that. It's in my Siglent playlist. It'll be in there, and it shows all the image system and everything that's in it. In, out. So it does have an interface and a USB TMC, which is flash drive. LAN settings. You can set up the IP for the LAN. Now, I was told it doesn't have a web server. That's what I believe is the case. Self-test screensaver stuff, I never use those. Well, reference positions, so if you want to do reference waveforms, you can do that sort of stuff, and where the cursors will sit. Lots of little features in here, just to tweak things a little bit how you want. Measurements, you can do all kinds of measurements. Statistics on, there we go, that's that menu there. We'll measure on, that's all the measurements of this particular measurement that's taken right now on channel 1. Right, so it's set for channel 1. I can set that to any channel you want. When enabled, you know, if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on, you can choose which one you want to have. Or you can do it based on the math function as well. You can do a math between two channels and do maybe a deduction or something like and then you can actually compare the stats on the math function. So it's very versatile. It's quite amazing what these modern scopes can do. I'll turn those off again for now. I'll leave statistics turned on. Gate time, if you want to do gating to try and do cursors, so you're trying to get something which is hard to actually measure, then you can actually use the cursors to know how to do that sort of stuff and work within just that particular measurement range. Require menu, pretty basic stuff. Normal, peak, average, ERES. XY mode does do that across those two channels, 1 and 2. I only have one signal going right now. Sequence mode, this isn't something I've used. I'm not familiar with that part myself. Memory depth, 14 meg maximum. I'll turn my channels on to change that. So if I turn all the channels on, I've got 7 meg maximum. Interpolarization, sin x, sin x, or x. Excitation fast. Cannot be used in sequence mode. Okay, we'll turn sequence mode back off again. Off. What was I going to do? Slow and fast acquisition. Turn these channels back off again. Bandwidth limiting on channels as well, so on channel 1, DC, AC coupling ground as normal. Bandwidth limiting, full 20 meg as normal. There's no 50 ohm input impedance switching, like some scopes will have a built-in 50 ohm load, so you can enable that on some scopes. This does not have that, so if you need to do 50 ohm loading to do matching on your circuitry, then you need to apply an external load for that. Coarse adjust, fine adjust. Probe 10 times. These are the various ones you can do. Right, 100 maximum, no, 1000, 2000, 5000, 10,000, or custom. You can do a custom one as well. So what's a custom allow us to do? Any range you want, is it? Yes, it is. We can do it by individual numbers. So if you want a 21 times probe, you've got one. Dave recently did a video showing a 21 times handmade probe, a transmission line coax, which is using it as a probe, and that's a 21 times. In this case, you could set 21 times. That's nice. Anyway, I'm going to go. Oh, you've got a whole bunch of custom ones you can do. You can preset them. Anyway, back to 10 times. So good. So that's all that stuff. Save and recall. If you've got a flash drive plugged in, you can do the save and recall stuff on that. You can save waveforms and different types. You can save setups, reference, bitmap, JPEG, PNG, binary, CSV unit, MATLAB, or to default key. So you can actually save the default setup and stuff like that as well. Cursors, I should show you that, shouldn't I? So you've got cursors on here, manual cursors, so you can move them around, put them where you want. You just select them, push that, move the other one. Right. Displays, vectors and dots. So dots are quite nice to see where the sample rates actually are. If I go really fast on here, there's the effective dots here. If I go back to vectors, it shows it as a line. So it gives you an idea of what your sample rate's actually like. So if I turn on more channels, you can see the sampling is very different here. It's changed it by quite a bit. You can just see where the dots are where it's doing the samples. Colour grading, so you can do that for how frequently a signal occurs. So that's a nice little feature as well. Persistence, infinite persistence, 1 second. Then the next page you've got grid, intensity, graphical and transparency. So because right now I'm viewing on camera and you can't really see the graphical, so let's just turn all this stuff up. Increase the intensities and stuff like that, just to make it all look a bit brighter. So then hopefully you can see it. There we go, you can see it now. Right, so that was actually turned down quite a lot. I don't want it too strong. Yeah, you can just about see it there, can't you? Transparency, so you've got overlays on screens, you can set the transparency level of those so you can see through them. Don't really see that being necessary. And the grid, you can change what kind of grid layout you've got, what kind of view you want to have, for depending on what kind of measurements you're trying to do. History, so you're trying to play back a trigger event, you can skip through them all. You can also do list as well if you really want to do that. You can scroll up and down to the list. So if you're trying to capture a certain event, you can just go through and just only capture the events to say you're using your memory more efficiently. To be honest, it's not something I've actually used. There's probably been times when I should have used it, but I haven't. Default, let's say that's one you can actually program yourself. So if you want to have a preset configuration, and you can push that and it'll go to that particular configuration if you're always doing the same kind of work. Trigger setup, same sort of stuff. Edge, slow pulse, video, window, interval, dropout, run to pattern, serial, and you choose which channel you're on. Rising, falling, alternating, hold off as well. Choose hold off times. It's very handy to have if you try and do demodulation. Coupling, noise rejection, just on or off. And also you got auto, normal, single capture on the trigger. Adjustable level, if you push this it will center it to that particular type. Math functions, what do you want to do? I mean, it's addition here, so you can add the channels together, deduct them. FFT, you also got FFT, I should show you FFT, shouldn't I? Everyone likes FFT. It's in there somewhere. There we go, there's the FFT. Alright. Because I'm doing a square wave, there's going to be all kinds of stuff in there. So I'll turn the math back off again, I suppose, but you've got the sources, channel AB, inversion, scaling, so you could do volts. You can actually set the ranges. Turn it back off. Reference waveforms, if you want to do reference waveform, you can do that on here as well. You can do rolling. Or you can just do standard. If you go fast enough, well slow enough, it will auto roll anyway. But when you go faster, it automatically turns the rolling off. Depending on what you're trying to do. And you can roll slower and slower. You can still do these really low speeds without rolling, so it's a selectable thing. You can turn it off if you want. You just want to do a capture over a long period of time. That will work as well. Search function as well, so you can search for thresholds and edges, and again another thing I've never actually used myself. I think that covers most of it actually. Considering this is a lower cost version of the XE, right? Think of it that way. All it's really lost is, well, really minor functions. I haven't really noticed that much, which is missing, to be honest. So obviously you got the MSO function, serial bus here for doing digital decoding. That's missing, but you can decoding on these. If you've got 4 inputs here, you can decode across these 4 inputs. You can use those, and in most cases that'll be alright. So it's not that big a loss. It just means you can't do logic level stuff. You know, you can't do the 8-channel logic analyzer function and stuff like that. You can't do that. That's the trade-off, I think, but basically it's got all the features that you would need. It doesn't feel like it's missing anything. Not really. Obviously decoding is the biggest thing. You think about, oh, it hasn't got the thing on there, but you can do it. Yes, you've probably got less protocols in here than I have on my XE. They're the common ones. That's the sort of thing you're going to use. You know, most people only be using I2C, SPI, and UART. That's the bulk of what most people will be using, at least in my belief. Any questions? No? Good. So what I'm going to do now is going to hook up my, well, I already have hooked up my Marconi here to output some RF signals, and I'm just going to check the bandwidth on this thing and see how it looks. So first I was actually going into the measurement waveform here, so I didn't actually show you this part. You go into measurement and you can choose the types of waveforms, or measurements you want to take. So we've got peak to peak as default. I've also just turned on RMS, so I want to see that as well. That's the measurement I want to check for. There's the measurements down here. So you got peak to peak at the top, RMS here. So I'm actually currently outputting about 500 millivolts RMS. So it's down very slightly here. This T junction is a little bit, as you can see, it's a bit how you doing on the T junction here, T on here. And now I'm getting 510. So there you go, it's changed just by wiggling it around a little bit. Yeah, it's not the best test setup, to be honest. So I'm inputting 10 megahertz, and as you can see up here, we're getting 10 megahertz up the top. So it's increased frequency, and we'll see what these levels go down to. Now, unfortunately, I can't output 1 volt on here. So what I've got to look for is basically half of 0.707. So I've got to look for basically 0.35 or 350 millivolts. Okay, so I'll look for 350 millivolts RMS, and that should then be the 3 dB point, if I've got that right. So let's go 100 megahertz. Actually, I'll go 50 megahertz first. Okay, frequency 50 megahertz. Increase horizontal. So 475. They're still looking fine. 50 megahertz. Let's do 80 megahertz. So probably too far there. 431 millivolts. That's still plenty. Still way above that. Let's do 95 megahertz. That's 395. 100 megahertz. That's doing 377. Yep, so it's exceeding the spec, basically. So 100 megahertz is the 3 dB point it's supposed to be. It's 105. It's almost there. 110. There you go. So it's about 108 or so. Let's try 108. There you go. It's 250 there. So about 108 megahertz is the actual bandwidth. Bandwidth is fine. It's doing what it says it can do. That's good. I've set a 10 megahertz again, and I've turned on AM modulation at 50% depth at 1 kilohertz. So you can see the waveform here has got the RF waveform with the modulation imposed on that. Okay, so that's what that other waveform is there. And if we go slower, you can see the audio waveform is now coming up here. There's the audio waveform there. By just triggering, I should be able to get a bit tidier. Alright, so there it is there. Okay, it looks about right too. That's actually really easy to get. So sometimes you need to do other things such as, God, trigger menu, hold off. So let's hold off timing 80 nanoseconds, and we can adjust this, and that can actually sometimes get you an even more stable waveform. So we're currently at 500 microseconds per division. So I basically need to have 500 microseconds hold off time. So let's bring this up. That's probably a better way of doing this, but I'm just going to wind it. There you go. About 450 there, and you see now it's rock solid. So now you've got a nice solid waveform there. If I just triggering, I'll change it slightly. So 2, 4, 6. If I did 6, maybe it'd be even better. Let's wind this up some more. You can see as I bring this trigger point down, if I wind this up some more, we should get more stability as it gets more to where it's supposed to be. There we go, 600. Right, so there you go. So that allows you to do triggering on an AM waveform quite nicely using hold off, in case you know how to do that. So yes, that's looking fine. That's looking alright. So that was actually really easy to get, even without using a hold off. It is able to capture it quite easily, so it's good. So if you found that interesting, don't forget to click like and subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon as well while you're at it. I may do a follow up with this if I've got some more details, like if I need to check out the web server. I may just chuck comments down below. So yeah, if there's anything minor which I want to add to it, I'm a bit tight for time, so I can't really dig too deep into this one right now, but I think I've covered the bulk of it. If there's anything specific you want to ask me, chuck me a comment down below. I might be able to answer it, or perhaps Rob will answer that question as well, because he follows my channel. He can pop up and answer some questions as well. Rob's did say it doesn't have a web server, but I know there is scope view software for these scopes, so it's probably using that. So yeah, maybe Rob can fill that in. I don't have a PC to try this on, so I can't check that software out. Give a thumbs up, subscribe, all that stuff, and I'm done waffling for today. I'll catch you later, and I'll see you next one. Bye.